Welcome to the third episode. That's the theme song. It's still a work in progress. All right, so this episode I wanted to talk about. It's like a Brazilian jazz fusion private press record. I like it a lot. So the name of the record, I am going to butcher this name. I'm going to butcher it. Bear with me. If you can pronounce it better, leave a voice message in the comments and tell me how to say it correctly, properly. You know. So it's called Madeira MP by Mario Negrão. Check it. Yup. Really cool cover. Yeah, nice record. Very nice record. I like it. This record, right off the bat, it kind of gave me like Weather Report fusion vibes. I'm not the biggest fan of Weather Report. I know a lot of people that do really like Weather Report, but this it kind of gave me Weather Report vibes in the sense that it was like hold up, I wrote it here. It's kind of game showy. Like it's kind of like 50s crooner jazz in the back, and a little bit game showy, but then there's this samba beat going on that I think makes it it fixes it, and it for me, and it makes me feel like it's more fresh. Yeah, like the record is a jazz fusion record. It came out in I think 74. I should maybe check before I start saying things that I don't know. Oh. Sick. So this record came out in 1980. Pretty cool. It feels older than that though. I thought that it came out in the 70s. Like I thought it came out in like 76, 74. I guess the drums do sound more modern on it. The kick is super deep. Which is great because it's the kick is kind of keeping the samba rhythm for the whole thing on most of the tracks, I think. And it sounds really good. The bass is it's like that really low end jazz fusion bass that's a little bit like punchy, and the bass really drives super good. I also felt like the horns that are on these tracks are like, it feels a little bit maybe closer to jazz to me than just a fusion record of like Brazilian like bossa nova. And it's almost like it has like the sensibility, the style, fancy schmancy words, the sensibility, the style of Brazilian music, of bossa nova, but then it feels maybe a little bit more like old-timey jazzy to me, like I said, kind of like game showy. It's really cool. Like I said, it's like that sound, I associate that sound with a certain time period. And on this record, I think it makes it feel a lot more fresh. It's just a more interesting dynamic to me for that sound, and I think they did it really well in that sense. Parts where the piano kind of sounds like a harp, and there's times where it's like there's this really beautiful like these beautiful harmonies, and I mean like they're like major harmonies on that the horns do, and then like the piano will come in a little bit dissonant and just kind of like pull you back in, where it's like, sometimes when stuff is super harmonious, it's almost like too harmonious, and you kind of end up forgetting to listen to it in a way, and the piano kind of drags you back in. Pow, little dissonance here, pow, and there, pow. And it's cool, I like the piano on this record. And like I said, it sounds like there's harp parts on it that the piano does, these twinkling harp parts. And it's really cool. Like I like it a lot. A lot of the record feels it feels very similar. It's like it kind of goes in the same feel and the same style for a while. There's tracks, like I like the whole record, but there's tracks that really stand out to me that I really like, and that's the reason why I got this record. This is like a private press Brazilian record, and it's kind of rare, and And so like I don't even think it's on Spotify. I'm gonna end up putting a link to it from YouTube, so that way anybody that's interested could listen to it, and I'll try to put some tags so that way if people are looking for this type of music, they'll be able to find it. Also, something that I wanted to mention about the instrumentation, there's this kind of mix of soprano saxophone and flute that comes through, and those two specifically, like there's other horns, I think there might be a trombone and there's a trumpet, and the trumpet is really, really good. The mix of the soprano saxophone and the flute, they like intermingle with each other, and the flute is insane. The flute is very, very like Brazilian to me, I guess is the way that I would say that. And it feels very like very foresty. It's like mystical, and the flute comes in and makes things mysterious at times. It's really, really interesting, I think. Also the trumpet, there's one track on here that the trumpet just, it sounds super Arturo Sandoval, and like very, to me it reminds me of like Cuban trumpet. He's squeezing out those notes. Whee! Shit's crazy, and it's really, really interesting. I think there was only from my recollection, there was only like one track that had the trumpet on it like that, but it was really, really good, and I think it made the track. The first track on the record is my favorite track. There's this really incredible bass line, boom, 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 and it's like, and then there's the flutes in the back, boom, 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 boom. Oh, and then there's go 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 go. The kick is going off, and the drums are incredible. That's my favorite track on the record. I heard that track and I was like, oh man, this is insane. And like I listened to the rest of it, and the rest of it was really, really good. But it's really the first track that stood out the most to me. It's just super intense. I felt like it almost feels like you're on a mission. There's this mission that you're on. You're like dong da dong da dong, and you're gung ho on this mission. And then there's certain breaks in it where like the flute comes in and just kind of like really like mellows it out, and it almost feels like you're on this mission and you've got these breaks along the mission, and just a little bit of downtime, and then it starts to get a little dissonant. It's like, oh, problems coming up again, got to get back onto the mission. It's cool. That's how I felt about it. It felt like an adventure, like a journey, and which I think that a lot of jazz music really, really is good at making these things feel like a journey. Like I think jazz music is really, really good at that, especially with the way that the drums are on the jazz music. It's almost like a common background on them, and then the instrumentation is what really, really brings everything else out with it and creates the environment in it. But it's like, it's all, because I hear people say that, a lot of jazz sounds the same, and that's true, but it's true with a lot of different genres. And I think that jazz is really, really great because it's just so creative. You have so many different things that you can do. Like a lot of pop music sounds the same because it's all the same chords, and maybe the melodies are a little bit different, but they're not that different. I think jazz maybe is just a little bit harder to listen to for people, because I think especially nowadays with music, a lot of people just end up listening mostly to the vocals and the lyrics, and that's really what they base the entire song on. And they don't realize that it's almost kind of like, especially with more modern music, there's a lot of the stuff that's just kind of repeating in the back, and it's just kind of a lot of songs are just end up repeating, and it's just that's just kind of how pop music is now. That was super off tangent. That was my little pop music rant. I'm not against pop music. I just think that there's more stuff that can be done with it. Definitely, pop music is a lot of fun. So this first track, really, really great track. That's the one that I would probably recommend you listen to. If you only want to listen to one song on the record, that's a really, really good bet to place. A few other tracks that stood out for me. The third track on the first side. So yeah, the third track, that one to me felt the most like game showy and most like crooner kind of jazz vibes that I was getting. The harmonies made it feel a lot more fresh, like I was saying before, and made it a lot more interesting. That's the one that the saxophone stands out a lot on it, and the trumpet to me stands out a lot on it. Makes it feel more jazzy than game showy, like kind of like elevator music-y, I guess. That's the one, and the drums are incredible on that track too. I think this is a record where, like, my favorite stuff on this record really, I think, is the drums. I think the drums really make a lot of it, and make it really, really interesting. Yeah, and then the fourth track, I really liked it. Just a quick mention of it. There's like this very, very harp-like piano on the beginning. And then there's like birds, and then it goes into this super long, well, it's not super long, It's it's not super long. It almost kind of feels long because you're going through this like this really beautiful soft intro, and then just boom, it hits you with these drums that are super intense. And so it's got like this percussion break for a while, drum break for a while, and then it goes into this really beautiful melody, and that one's really good too. And then I guess the last song I'm gonna talk about on this one that you should check out is the last song on the second side. So the last song on the record, and that one's really cool. The whole record feels a lot like fusion. It's got your instrumentation, basic instrumentation that's jazz. It's got the horns. It's got the bass, and the bass has that certain fusion sound, and then the drums kind of have like a more modern fusion sound, and really drive. And then the last song has synths, and there's a lot of instruments that have like envelope filters, and I think chorus, and there's some wah in there too. So it goes from this kind of more like more conservative, which I mean, like, fusion is not conservative for jazz, but for fusion, this is that style is a little bit more conservative. And then it goes into like the more futuristic is the way that I think it sounds instrumentation on that track. And then what I thought was really cool about that track, I was listening to the whole record, and I hadn't listened to the record in a little while, but I remember that I really liked this record, and I'm listening to it, and I'm listening to all these different things, and there's birds, and then there's hand drums, and then there's the drums punching, and then there's like this very Brazilian feel to the whole thing, and then the last track just hits you, and it's like a synth jam, and I'm like, what? What's that? I thought that was so weird, and then I kind of like I had this moment where I was sitting there after listening to it, and I'm like, oh man, this record is like, it's like if you were walking out in the countryside in Brazil. You're walking out in the countryside, you're just like thinking about your life. You're contemplating all these different things, you're going back and forth in your mind, all this different stuff is happening. Like you just get abducted by aliens, and then you're like, where am I? And then the aliens are like, yo, check this out. They just start jamming on synths. You're like, oh, that's kind of nasty. All right, all right. And yeah, I just thought that was a funny dynamic to it. I thought it was interesting. Funny that they put that song as the last song, just kind of put it in there. Very cool. Yeah, private press jazz, that kind of makes it a little bit interesting too. This isn't, it's not something that people hear all the time, which I think is fun about it. There's a lot of private press stuff that I find that ends up being like, it's just like one-off stuff that sounds really weird. It's like this guy was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna figure out how to record this in a studio, and I have this idea, I have this vision, I'm gonna try to make it happen. And then they end up making something special, something kind of interesting, which is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Again, I'm gonna show it to you guys right here. Yep. Interesting cover. I don't know how well it's coming out in the video, but yeah, there's like a tree back there, and then it's got these muted colors, khaki, darker khaki, and then it's accented almost like in a shadow, almost like a negative, and in that yellowish color scheme. Very cool. Again, the record is by Mario Negrão, and it's called Madeira MP. Oh, you know. And yeah, I really like this record. I definitely want to cover some more Brazilian records. I really got into them. I heard the first João Gilberto record. It's kind of like greenish, and it's got his face on there. He's like, and that one, I heard that, and I was like, oh man, like, it's just like I could really hear where all of the stuff, that all the bossa nova that I'd heard before came from. And bossa nova is kind of hit or miss for me, just because it's like I hear a lot of different harmonies get repeated throughout. And I also think that they ended up taking bossa nova, the powers that be, those monsters, they took something beautiful and turned it into elevator music. Oh, good God. And it just kind of, in my mind, as a kid, I was like, oh, this is elevator music. This can't be cool. And so after I heard that record, I realized, like, oh no, there's a lot of really incredible stuff. And And yeah, my best friend growing up is Brazilian, and so he grew up kind of like taking classes on classical guitar, and he ended up learning a lot of bossa nova too from it, which is really really cool. And so he shows me that stuff all the time, and I think it's incredible. I think it's really really interesting. Just the use of chords and harmony in what they do, and in Brazilian music in general, and I'm Cuban, and there's a lot of all the Afro-Cuban music is really really interesting to me. All the rhythms and everything that come out of that, and the samba music is it's just another form of these African rhythms, and it's really really incredible the way that it makes you feel, the way that it makes you move. It's definitely got it's a special thing. It's got special qualities and traits, and it's very beautiful. So that's the end of this episode. Make sure you tune in next week for the next episode. I don't know what I'm going to be covering. It's going to be something good. It's going to be something that has a certain sound. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that was episode 3. Take care. Have a good one. Good night, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Make sure you eat your entire dinner and don't eat too late, because if you do, you will put on water weight. All right? Take care, folks. Check. 1, 2, 1, 2, test. 1, 2, 2. All right.